If you look at every organization today, be it a university, a school, a government, a secret society, anything, a multinational company, business of any kind, they're structured as a pyramid. The pyramid is the structure of society today. I believe that we're actually moving in this spiritual awakening that's going on now from the pyramid to the circle, which is a very, very different way of people contributing to society. But at the moment we have the hierarchy, the pyramid, which works like this. In any organization, you've got a very, very few people at the peak of the pyramid. That very few people know exactly what that organization's about, what its real agenda is, what it's really trying to achieve. The further you come down from that peak in any organization, you're meeting more and more and more people who know less and less and less and less about what the organization's really about. They only know their part. The CIA call this compartmentalization, keeping from everyone else in the pyramid how what they're doing in apparent innocence links in with what other people are doing in apparent innocence to produce a very sinister pattern. I was talking to a guy who worked for 20 years at the listening station at Cheltenham, GCHQ. And he was telling me that that building is actually structured under this process of compartmentalization. If you work at GCHQ, you have an electronic card which only gets you in that part of the building where you work. You can't get anywhere else. So the only people in GCHQ who know everything that's coming in, how it fits together and what's really going on, what the real pattern is the very, very few people at the top. This is how it works all along. The Freemasons are a classic example of this. When you say that the Freemason secret society is involved, people think that you must be saying that every Freemason wants to manipulate the world to global dictatorship. Utterly ridiculous. Of course they don't. But if you look at the Freemason structure, the vast overwhelming majority of Freemasons in the world, you know, the ones that go down the local lodge and roll their trouser leg up and show their left thing or whatever, you know. Strange. I've always wanted to do that. It'd be a bit of fun. They never get higher than the bottom 3 levels of degree, the overwhelming majority. But in the Scottish rite of Freemasonry, which pervades much of world politics, particularly in America and other areas, there's another 30 degrees above that, to the 33rd degree, which the vast majority of Freemasons never get near. And there's another 13 levels not officially accepted to exist, which some people call Illuminati degrees, which at that level, the Freemason secret society is in a different universe to the part where the vast majority of Freemasons exist, right down here. Compartmentalization. This is how it works. So every one of these institutions that control the direction of the world and our daily lives is a pyramid. The banking system is a pyramid. You go into the local bank, the person you meet across the counter won't even know what's going on in the bank manager's office behind them, let alone what's going on at board level and higher. So the banking system is a pyramid going to a peak. The intelligence agency network in the world is a pyramid going to a peak. At that peak, all the major intelligence agencies, British intelligence, Mossad, the CIA, all these around the world, they're the same organization. Not here, but here they are. The multinational company network is a pyramid. So is the global media and so on. And there is a global pyramid within which all these work, in which the peaks of all these individual pyramids, banking, business, media, etc., fuse into one peak. And up there, it's speculated by many people, there perhaps may be no more than 13 families, 13 people at the peak, pervading down through these different levels the same basic policy, which is pushing the world towards more and more centralization of power. And within this global pyramid are a series of organizations which, from my experience anyway, most journalists will never have heard of. But working together, they form the core of the secret government of the world. And this is operating well above the level of the Clintons and the Majors and the Coles and so on. Indeed, they are manipulating events to make sure that their people get into positions of power. There is this like cozy little myth that is perpetuated between politicians and the media. Politicians walk the world stage as if they are the final arbiters of power in the world. So when a president speaks, the cameras run and it's flashed around the world, prime ministers and such like. The media report the world as if presidents and prime ministers are the final arbiters and decision makers in the world, which means that the people above the level of presidents and prime ministers that really make the decisions, they're never looked at or exposed by the mainstream media because they're not accepted to exist. This group of organizations began to be created after the establishment of a secret society in Britain, because Britain's been a real center for this. A secret society called the Round Table, involving a guy called Cecil Rhodes, after which Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, was named. In 1919, the Versailles Peace Conference, the American members of this Round Table Secret Society, who just happened to be, merely coincidental of course, the main players behind the American government that went in and fought the First World War, met at the Hotel Majestic in Paris with the British members of this secret society, which, yet another coincidence, just happened to be the key members of the British war cabinet in the First World War. In 1921 came the next in these organizations. The American version of the Royal Institute was known as the Council on Foreign Relations. Now, since 1921, virtually every president of the United States has been a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. The Royal Institute of International Affairs works to control British domestic and particularly foreign policy. Don't matter who's in, Labour or Conservative, same people run the show, which is becoming more and more obvious. And the Council on Foreign Relations in America is there to control and manipulate American, particularly foreign policy, but other policies also. 1954 came an organization which today is probably the key organization in this network, called the Bilderberg Group. Bilderberg Group met officially for the first time in 1954 at the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbeek, Holland, under the chairmanship of a member of the Dutch royal family called Prince Bernhard, who has an interesting CV. He was, according to many published works, a member of the SS before the war, worked for German intelligence during the war, and then became a major shareholder of Shell Oil after the war. Present chairman of the Bilderberg Group is Lord Carrington, former British cabinet minister and foreign secretary when the mistakes were made that led to the Falklands War. He resigned as the result of those mistakes and was given the job as Secretary General of NATO. Nice work if you can get it. Lord Carrington and his buddy Henry Kissinger come up everywhere. They are two of the super gophers of this manipulation. They're not top of the pyramid people necessarily, though Kissinger is up there. They are people who go around manipulating into place the policies decided, playing one off against the other and such like. The Bilderberg Group, like all these others I talk about, have among their number the top people, and I mean the top people, in global politics. Not Fred Jones, MP for, you know, Margate East or something. Prime ministerial, presidential, ministerial and leader of the opposition level, I'm talking about. The top people in global banking, the top people in the global multinational company network, in the global military. The Secretary General of NATO is always there. Indeed, it's a Bilderberg appointment, that post. The top people in the global media. The Bilderberg Group has a steering committee which meets all the time, monthly, usually in Britain, to discuss policy and keep this program going of centralization of power towards world government and stuff, which incidentally the European Union is a stepping stone towards. And then once a year it meets somewhere in the world in very strict secrecy and has a big conflab with loads and loads of people from around the world coming in. They try very hard even to keep quiet where they're meeting, never mind what they're actually discussing. This is a private meeting of a private organization attended by many, many of the people we see on the news and in the newspapers every week, and actually have the opportunity to vote for in this democracy that we're supposed to live in. Lord Carrington, Henry Kissinger, David Rockefeller, of the Rockefeller Empire, which is fundamentally involved in all this. Representatives of the House of Rothschild, also fundamentally involved in this. And many of the other key people, like Agnelli, the head of Fiat, and people like that. The big players in the world banking, political, and business network. And it's amazing how if your attitude turns out to be the right attitude for the people that control that organization, how your career can soar after you're invited to these conflabs. In the 1970s, certainly outside of Britain, a virtually unknown, very little known, conservative opposition spokesman called Margaret Thatcher started being invited to some Bilderberg meetings. She goes on to be not only leader of the Conservative Party, but leader of Britain, Prime Minister, right through the 1980s, when fundamental changes were happening to British society through something called Thatcherism. Interestingly, on the other side of the Atlantic at the same time, purely by coincidence of course, we had Reaganomics, which just happened to be the same economic policies. Isn't life funny, all these coincidences? It couldn't just be that the same people made sure both were in power at the same time, because that economics was exactly what was required through the 80s as part of this plan for centralization on a global level. In 1991, even in America, a virtually unknown governor for Arkansas called Bill Clinton was invited to the Bilderberg meeting in Baden-Baden, Germany. Within a year, this guy is successfully running for President of the United States. In 1993, another relatively unknown Labour Party Home Affairs spokesman in Britain called Tony Blair was invited to the Bilderberg meeting in Greece, along with his opponent, the Conservative Chancellor, Kenneth Clarke, by the way. Within a year, Tony Blair is leader of the Labour Party and, barring a miracle, will become Prime Minister of this country. It's a great career move. The last 5 Secretary Generals of NATO, and I only know it's the last 5 because that's only as far as I've had time to check back, it's many more than that. The last 5 Secretary Generals of NATO, Bilderberg's group members. Manfred Werner, Joseph Luns, Lord Carrington, Willy Claes, the present one, Javier Solana, Bilderberger. And indeed, when they were discussing who was going to be the new Secretary General of NATO, it was between 3 people. Javier Solana, Bilderberg Group, Uwe Ellemann-Jensen of Denmark, Bilderberg Group, and Ruud Lubbers, the former Dutch Prime Minister, Bilderberg Group. The head of the World Bank and many of his predecessors, James Wolfensohn, the World Bank, whose investment policies in what we call the Third World have created human and environmental mayhem for decades, Bilderberg members. And one of the big Bilderberg policies since 1954, indeed before, 54 was when it became